An all too familiar question from our women: what have we done? Yet another South African female is dead at the hands of gender-based violence, the emotion raw and painful at her visual.
You know, coming here, I think Magafika la already she was gone. Bekangasekho. Umuntu ongasekho uyasinda. It means bamtrekile umntwana. Bamtreka. Bamtreka. Bafika. Bamhenga lana.
The day will come. Don't care whether we are winning the peace or not. But the day will come. Never learn. Never.
Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, my name is Bongi and thank you so very much for stopping by. I post true crime videos every Wednesday, so if you're into true crime, then you might want to consider subscribing, but if not, then it's cool, no pressure. Today's video is about the rather recent murder of Tshegofatso Pule, which took place in June of 2020. So if you'd like to know all about Tshegofatso and what transpired and everything that happened afterwards, then this is the video for you. But before I get into it, as per usual, I'd like to make my disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anybody that I'm going to be talking about in this video and all the families that were and are affected by this case. This video is purely for educational and documentary purposes, and all the information was simply gotten off the internet and compiled into one video. And with that being said, let's just get right into it. So Tshegofatso Pule's murder took place in June of 2020, as I've already mentioned, and this took the country by storm. Everybody in the country was not only shocked but hurt, because at the time the country was under hard lockdown, and it brought to light the reality that if such crimes could happen at a time when we thought that people were off the streets, everybody was in their houses, then that simply meant that none of us was safe, you know. And also, to top it all off, Tshegofatso was 8 months pregnant. But anyway, Tshegofatso was more than just somebody's victim. She was a person, and today we're going to be getting into Tshegofatso as a person, who she was before all of this happened. So Tshegofatso Pule was born in 1992 in Meadowlands, Soweto, Johannesburg, to parents Lungi Mashiane and Makina Mashiane, who both passed away when Tshegofatso was still very, very young. Losing a parent is obviously not an easy thing to deal with, and one can only imagine how it must have been or felt for the young Tshegofatso to lose her parents at such a young age. But the good part about this, I guess, is that after her parents' death, she and her siblings were taken in by relatives who treated them and raised them as their own. At the time of the events of today's case, Tshegofatso was living with her aunt in Meadowlands, which is a suburb in Soweto that was founded in the early 1950s during apartheid for black residents from Sophia town. I just thought I should add in a little history about the town. Tshegofatso was loved by many people in her community. She was a bubbly yet very humble person who loved the finer things in life and had a passion for beauty and fashion. She dreamt of becoming a beautician and a fashion guru. This is something that she got from her mother, who was remembered as always fashionable by people who knew her. But despite all of this, Tshegofatso was very secretive about many things, especially her personal affairs. It wasn't really easy for her to share personal stuff with others. She would rather keep it to herself, and her family said that most of the time she would smile through the pain. They would see that she wasn't fine and would ask her, Tshegofatso, what's going on? And Tshegofatso would just say, no, I'm fine, everything is fine, and not let her family in. Tshegofatso, who was 28 years old at the time, was in a relationship with a 32-year-old JSE analyst, Ntuthuko Shoba, who also lived in Johannesburg. The two of them had a somewhat difficult relationship and would argue almost all the time. It wasn't just petals and roses anymore. It was just a dark place, a dark relationship. filled with a lot of arguing. When Tshegofatso fell pregnant was when Ntuthuko started showing clear signs of disinterest. He wasn't invested or even interested in Tshegofatso or the well-being and health of their unborn child. In fact, he wanted Tshegofatso to abort, but Tshegofatso wanted to keep the baby, so she just figured that she needed to do something to gain her independence so that she could afford both herself and her baby. It was around this time that she started looking into starting her own makeup business, doing house calls, and also possibly having her own makeup brand in the near future. Things were looking good for her. She was looking forward to the future and looking forward to being everything that she's ever dreamed of. I don't think she knew that the person that she called her boyfriend was such a terrible monster. The month of May 2020 started off on a negative note and ended on one for Tshegofatso, and she was about 7 months pregnant at this time. At the beginning of the month, on the 5th of May to be precise, was when Tshegofatso started receiving threatening SMSs from an unknown person, which she suspected was Ntuthuko Shoba's wife or fiance. This supposed woman sent a message to Tshegofatso claiming that she had connections and knew where Tshegofatso worked. The message read, "I'm coming to your workplace. Keep disrespecting me, wena. Woman to woman, how do you feel sleeping with another woman's man like that? You are the pits." To which Tshegofatso responded, "Wena wahlanya," which translates to "you are crazy." These messages were exchanged back and forth up until the 8th of May. On the 7th of May, this other woman sent Tshegofatso a message saying, "You make me sick." And on the 8th of May, she sent her a message saying, "Stop being generous with your cook. Look now, so many possibilities of who the father is. I feel for you, CC." Tshegofatso did not respond to the last two messages, and thankfully she never received any more messages from this unknown number. 10 days later, on the 18th of May, Tshegofatso received a message from a woman called Zandile or Zanele, who explained that she was from a recruitment agency and asked if Tshegofatso was looking for a makeup job, which she was. She told Tshegofatso that she had a job for her and also explained that for this job she would have to teach people how to do their makeup, and the plus side of this job, this particular job, was that Tshegofatso could work from home since it was, you know, lockdown. Tshegofatso was very interested in the job, and so Zandile or Zanele told her that the interview would take place on the 29th of May at the McDonald's restaurant in Omonde, and she also told Tshegofatso to make sure to arrive 2 hours earlier. I don't know exactly what time was set, but Tshegofatso was told to arrive 2 hours before the set time. Tshegofatso was with her friend at the time when she was receiving the details of this interview, and her friend told Tshegofatso that she thought that the location was rather strange, especially because at the time the country was under hard lockdown and people weren't even allowed to eat at restaurants. So she just found it strange that she was told to go to McDonald's for a job interview. She just didn't think that that made sense. But anyway, the 29th of May arrived, and Tshegofatso receives a message from Zandile or Zanele telling her that she's running late and asking Tshegofatso to get into a jeep that would be parked outside the McDonald's restaurant. Thankfully, Tshegofatso ended up deciding not to go. I mean, it was a bit sketchy, so I think she could see the sign. About a week after this event, on the 4th of June 2020, Tshegofatso received a message from her baby's father, Ntuthuko Shoba, asking her to head over to his place so that they could discuss some issues, some stuff regarding the baby's clothes. Tshegofatso didn't really want to go anywhere that day, but she was 8 months pregnant and she needed to do anything that she could in preparation for the baby's birth. So when Ntuthuko called her over, she ended up just deciding to go there so that they could talk about the baby's clothes and other stuff that the baby would need once the baby was born. When she arrived, she and Ntuthuko got into an argument, after which she called her aunt and told her not to lock up because she would be heading back home. She told her aunt that Ntuthuko had called an Uber for her and that's what she would be using to get home. I guess she hadn't planned on going back home, but the argument changed her mind. Unfortunately though, she wouldn't make it back home that night and her family couldn't reach her anymore after her initial call. This was very unlike her. Firstly, Tshego's family knew her to be someone who stuck to her word. If she said, I'm coming back, she was definitely going to be coming back. And secondly, if she had changed her mind, she would call them again to let them know. It was also unlike her not to pick up the phone. They kept on calling her, but they weren't reaching her, and this was really something that was not in Tshego's character. So of course the family was worried, with good reason. The following day, Tshego's cousin Palesa called Ntuthuko to ask if Tshego was with him, but he said that she wasn't, and also asked Palesa to keep him posted. After that, Ntuthuko sent Tshego a text message claiming that he was worried about her. The family kept trying to get through to Tshego, to reach Tshego, and after about 2 days of trying to reach Tshego with no luck, Palesa finally decided to head over to the police station to open a missing persons report. Ntuthuko actually assisted her by going with her to the police station and informing the police about the CCTV cameras that were outside his apartment. The police also took a look at his phone and found nothing suspicious. In his affidavit, Ntuthuko told the police that Tshego had left in a silver Jeep SUV, which he thought was her Uber ride. He told them that he did not approach the car or interact with the driver because it seemed like Tshego knew him, and he thought that that was Tshego's new boyfriend. But other than that, he had nothing more to tell the police, and they found nothing suspicious about him, so they decided to just let him go and continue with the investigation. After all, this wasn't a formal questioning or anything. It was just, they were just questioning him as somebody who might know where Tshego was, I guess. It was not a formal questioning or interrogation. They were just asking him. Very unfortunately though, Tshegofatso Pule's body would be found hanging from a tree in Durban Deep, Roodepoort, and she had a gunshot wound to her chest. She was 8 months pregnant at the time. She was found by a community member who called the police to the scene immediately. Tshego's family then had to go identify the body, which was the hardest thing that they had to do, but it was confirmed that that was indeed the body of Tshegofatso Pule. So now the investigation had gone from a missing persons investigation to a murder investigation. So the police took a look at the CCTV footage that Ntuthuko had told them about. He was seen walking outside the gate with Tshego a few moments before they were approached by a grayish silverish Jeep which parked a few meters from them. Tshego was then seen approaching the car, but then the footage skips 3 minutes to when the Jeep was driving away and Ntuthuko Shoba was walking back inside his apartment complex. There's literally 3 minutes that are unaccounted for, and we have no idea what transpired during those 3 minutes. We don't know whether Tshego walked into this car voluntarily or whether she was forced inside or whether something happened. We really don't know because the footage was deleted. The footage is missing. Upon further investigations, the police did manage to track down the car and found that it belonged to the girlfriend of a man called Muzikayise Malephane, who was acquainted with Ntuthuko Shoba. Muzikayise Malephane was then arrested. I don't really know the exact details of what led to his arrest, but he was arrested and even managed to get into a plea deal with the state in which he implicated Ntuthuko Shoba. He admitted to killing Tshegofatso Pule, but claimed that he acted under Ntuthuko's instructions. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and then he also became the state's prime witness. And honestly speaking, he was the key to cracking this entire case because nobody knew anything. If it wasn't for Muzikayise Malephane, we would probably still be in the dark, and Ntuthuko Shoba would probably still be roaming the streets of Johannesburg acting like nothing ever happened. I'm not commending him for doing what he did, but he was a prime witness in this case, and he did serve as the missing pieces to the puzzle piece, if that makes sense. The missing pieces to the puzzle. Ntuthuko Shoba was arrested in February of 2021, and he was charged with 1 count of murder, alternatively conspiracy to commit murder, and 1 count of defeating the ends of justice. He pleaded not guilty to all charges and attempted to get bail 3 times, but was denied bail all 3 times. When he was arrested, the police found Ntuthuko's other phone, and the cell phone data collected from this particular phone revealed that Ntuthuko had contacted Malephane a total of 23 times on the day that Tshegofatso was murdered. He called him before Tshegofatso arrived at his place and also after Tshegofatso was murdered. Police also found that earlier on June 4th, Ntuthuko had visited Malephane at his girlfriend's place. Malephane claims that this visit was to discuss the details of the murder and how it would take place, how it would be carried out, while Ntuthuko claims that he just went there to go buy cigarettes because Malephane was selling them illegally during the 2020 ban. During Ntuthuko's trial, Malephane took the stand, and this is when he described how the murder took place, how he killed Tshegofatso, and what the exact plan was. He told the court that Ntuthuko approached him looking for a hitman to take out his pregnant girlfriend for a price of 70,000 rand. He told Malephane that he wanted to take out his pregnant girlfriend because he didn't want his wife to find out, because he stood a chance to benefit from an 8 million rand life cover payout because his wife's mother had passed on a few months prior, and if his wife would find out about his infidelity, she would leave him, and that would obviously compromise his chances of benefiting financially from her. When he initially approached Malephane, he wanted him to help him find a hitman. He didn't necessarily want Malephane to, to do the job himself, but Malephane was like, 70k, I'm gonna do it. So he ended up deciding to be the hitman himself. The initial date that he was supposed to kill Tshegofatso was the 29th of May, the day of the interview. They came up with this whole interview plan as a scheme to try and lure Tshegofatso into their trap. And when Tshegofatso didn't show up, Malephane called Ntuthuko to let him know that she didn't show up, and Ntuthuko, according to Malephane, sounded extremely annoyed by that. They then had to change the plan and push back the date. This is when Ntuthuko told Malephane that he wanted Tshegofatso to be hanged at Maritzburg Bridge in a staged suicide. The plan was that he would take Tshegofatso's phone before the actual suicide or after the actual suicide, and then leave a suicide note, a suicide message on Tshegofatso's WhatsApp status. He testified that on the day that Tshegofatso died, he was the one driving the gray silver Jeep, and he picked Tshegofatso up and drove her to Noordgesig. He parked the car on the side of the road, pulled Tshegofatso out of the car and shot her. He then picked her up, put her in the backseat, and drove her all the way to Durban Deep and Roodepoort, and then hanged her on the tree. When asked why he shot her when the instruction was to make it look like a suicide, he told the court that he didn't have the guts to hang her alive. During the trial, Tshegofatso's messages to Ntuthuko Shoba were also pulled up, and they revealed that Ntuthuko Shoba really did not care of Tshegofatso or, like I said, the well-being of their unborn child. It also revealed that this was actually Tshegofatso's second pregnancy by Ntuthuko Shoba, and that she was forced to abort the first baby by Ntuthuko and now was refusing to abort the second one. When Ntuthuko Shoba took this stand, he denied knowing anything about the murder, saying that while he knew Malephane to be a car thief, he never thought of him as a hitman. However, from the cell phone records acquired by the state, it was pretty clear that Ntuthuko Shoba had called Malephane multiple times before and on the day of the murder, even visiting him just mere hours before Tshegofatso was killed. That could not be just a simple coincidence. Ntuthuko Shoba was found guilty of conspiracy to murder and sentenced to life in prison. Tshegofatso's family was really affected badly by this. I watched videos of them just talking about how the murder has affected them as a family, and the aunt was basically saying that they can't even bring up Tshegofatso's name in the home because whenever they say it, people just start crying. Everybody just starts crying because nobody has made peace with the fact that Tshego is actually gone and that she actually left this world in such a terrible way. I also watched a video of the family remembering Tshego a year after her death, so on the 4th of June last year, 2021, and everybody, it was such a painful video to watch because the cries of everybody there at that location. They were standing underneath the tree where Tshego was hung, by the way. Everybody was crying and it was such heartbreaking sobs. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just really heartbreaking. It was tough, hard to watch. Ntuthuko Shoba showed zero remorse, zero emotion throughout his entire trial. And if that does not show you, if that doesn't tell you what type of person he is, then nothing ever will, sweetheart. Ntuthuko is just a terrible, terrible person. He does not even regret what he did. Honestly, you can see it in this man's face. You can see it in his posture. Everything about him just screams, I don't give a fuck. Really, honestly. But I'm happy that he was sentenced to life in prison and he won't be able to do this to any more people ever again. That brings us to the end of today's case, the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, just hit the like button and also comment down below what it is that you thought about this case and this video. And if you haven't subscribed already, please click that subscribe button and join me again next week Wednesday as we talk about yet another case. And with that being said, that is it from me to you. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.